everybody, it's your girl Raspberry Barrel here, back at it again to read our next Biography of Mewni. And today we'll be reading a biography by MewniHistorian on DeviantArt, Dipper, the Father of Stars, which will be a 4-part biography reading. Hopefully if this all works out, you'll be getting the next part the day after tomorrow. So a video every other day. But if it doesn't, and this is a once-a-week video, well then, thank you guys anyway. So without further ado, let's just dive right into the adventure of Dipper. Please forgive me if I stutter, hesitate, or mispronounce anything, and for any noises in the background. Dipper, the Father of Stars. With a mother who explored Mewmons to lands near and far, he studied the seas and skies, that's why he the Father of Stars. Born Darturk 31st, 943 BS, died Norvath 62nd, 817 BS. Reigned from 918 BS to 982 BS. Married to Cleo Denial. Children, Hemra Butterfly, Orbita Butterfly, Johansson, and Alexander Butterfly. Dipper's wand was the longest wand, tied with his descendant Orion's. The handle was a simple silver, but chromostallic steel at the tip, a rare metal with magnetic properties. Instead of a bell, the top was all a deep-sea quartz, named because of its color and location where it was found. Though the wand could be pulled in half to view the mill horse, the wand's charger was a blue diamond on the outside, but on the inside was a night onyx, which is what he needed to replace to charge his wand. His mill horse was the same as his mother's, Celeste. Dipper's crown was silver, and the 4 gems were large blue sapphires, and these sapphires were ones he found while on his years at sea. Prince Dipper Butterfly was born on Darturk 31st, 943 years before the reign of Skywin. Dipper was born with his father's blue hair, but his eyes were green, a mix of his parents' hair colors. He had light purple inverted 5-point stars on his cheeks. Dipper might have been the firstborn, but his claim to the throne wasn't a guarantee due to the matrilineal law of the butterflies. But Dipper never gained a sister, but 4 lovely brothers. As Dipper was only 2.5 years old when his brother Leo was born, Dipper had no memories of being an only child. Dipper adored his younger brothers, and 2 years later he gained 2 more brothers, Phobos and Deimos. Then, 4 years later, Dipper gained yet again another brother, Planet. While he loved his brothers, Dipper was closest to Leo, being his protector, as Leo wasn't the healthiest kid. Throughout his childhood, Dipper accompanied his mother on many trips to the firefly colonies, fascinated with the ocean they traveled across. When the ship would stop in calm waters, Dipper would go swimming in the ocean, feeling right at home in the open waters. On a trip in early 933 BS, Dipper went for a night swim with his mother and was utterly fascinated with the light of the moons and stars reflecting in the waters, curious to know the secret of the lights above. On Thurk in 933 BS, Dipper's great-grandmother St. Mo passed away. The family gathered in Thamor for the funeral, as did a large amount of other royals, but only the butterflies, dragonflies, and a couple of fireflies gathered at the tower, and it was there Dipper met his long-lost aunt Hecate. She seemed to appear from the shadows themselves, and she hugged him. Being the only nephew she's seen before, she vanished years ago. After greeting her other family, Hecate had a private chat with Dipper, saying how dangerous the world was, touching her veil as she said that, and Dipper knew what she meant. She handed him an enchanted parchment, one easily concealed, and on it was a spell. It explained that if he was ever in deep trouble, just to say the incantation and he would be safe. He never told his parents about the spell and always made sure to keep it on him. Dipper became close to his cousin, Avizandum, the future Dragonfly King, who was only a half-year younger. Avizandum was an only child when they grew up. He gained a sister when he was 17, so he was close to Dipper. Often joked he was a brother from a different mother. He looked like their grandfather Zim. but his eyes were his mother's, and he bared no marks as they disappeared after a couple generations without the wand. But most importantly, he shared Dipper's passion for the sea. In Squartuk of 73 of 930 BS, Dipper was exploring the woods on the outskirts of the capital city and was attacked by an Banschnager, a beast that slaughtered men and is really near impossible to kill. He carried the spell his Aunt Hecate gave him, but when he stopped to read it, the Banschnager got on top of him and opened its stomach mouth. He shouted the incantation, messing it up, and the paper glowed and caused an explosion that completely destroyed the Banschnager, but also left a large area of the woods scorched. When he got up and saw the destruction he caused, his left arm hurt, and there he saw dark veins on his arm. He then proceeded to run back home, rubbing the mark, but it wasn't like a mole, more like his emblems. They were part of his skin. When he reached a hill and saw the castle, he looked back at the scar he left on the woods and just cried, fell onto the ground and cried. He destroyed the Banschnager, as well as several other creatures that lived in the woods. Dipper just couldn't believe the destruction he caused, how much danger one spell did, much less one done by him, with no kind of training. He couldn't help but be afraid of magic, worried that if one spell could do this, what would he do when he wielded the wand next year? That was the first time he doubted the title as future ruler, and never wanted the responsibility for that kind of damage ever again. Dipper running for his life. When he returned home, he told his parents everything, and they were unable to heal his dark scar, no matter what kind of magic they used. He wore long sleeves to hide the mark, but after talking with his parents, they allowed him not only get a tattoo to cover up the mark, but a matching one on the other arm, and he chose blue butterflies, the symbol of his house. He also confided in his parents how he felt about magic, reassuring him that not all magic was like what he had performed. When the time came for Dipper to receive the wand, the night before his 14th, Celine had a chat with him. She talked about how the wand was a massive responsibility, but that magic itself was nothing to fear, only the person using it, and she reassured him that he was a good person and he was gonna be an excellent mage in the future. The next day, Dipper took the wand from his mother and it transformed into a long and slender spear. Dipper was both excited and cautious when wielding the wand, not entirely sure how to use such a tall wand that required two hands, but he got the hang of it. Glosswork wasn't much help. Once as a kid, questioned if he was a boy. He grew much more confident in his spell making when he read about the troubles his mother, grandmother, and great-grandmother had with their magic in the beginning. Dipper was later tested by Baby, the smoke cat creature created by his grandmother Alexandra to test princesses on their skill level. While she stated he wasn't near his mother's skills, he was pretty good. He also learned how to use his wand as an actual weapon, but was more into disarming techniques than kill moves. He learned from his aunt Beresa, a monarch, formerly Phoenix, on how to fight without seriously injuring the opponent. He competed in the spring tournament of 928 BS and made it pretty far, but the winter that year was a Basie Denial, the youngest son of the Denials, and an immediate older brother to Cleo Denial, who faced off against her brother but lost. Though they had never met before, Dipper and Cleo hit it off, impressed by her show of physical strength, and she would be attending the Sorcery Academy that summer, and the two promised to meet up. On a trip to the Firefly Kingdom, he used magic to draw solid lines in the stars, making shapes out of them. Dipper also took notice how the stars changed between Luciolus and Farfilion, and his mother took notice of his interest. Dipper made a request to sail the oceans when he was older, and his parents agreed, but it would be a while before he would be captain of a ship. Sadly, that was also the year his grandfather Pines passed, and while his mother was devastated, he and his brothers were there to comfort her. The next year in 927 BS, Dipper along with his cousin Avizandum were put under the tutorship of Captain Njord Johansson, who was the most experienced captain of their time, the only one who dared sail deep into the Glacier Sea. Dipper and Avizandum made plans to sail. They would set off at Dipper's 18th birthday in 2 years, on his brother Cleo's 13th birthday, their parents agreed to let him accompany Dipper on his voyage in 2 years, and Dipper was happy to have his brother coming. While both Dipper and Avizandum learned how to man a ship, but Dipper learned how to be captain. Avizandum had no problem showing authority, but this was Dipper's ship, and he needed to learn how to be an authority figure, both as a captain and as a future ruler. But being an authority figure wasn't Dipper's strong suit, but as Dipper grew up, he got more assertive and more confident in giving orders. When he was 17 in 926 BS, his youngest brother, Planet, who was 8 years old, was kidnapped by Mewmons who were looking for a ransom for the queen. The message delivered by Phobos and Deimos, who were 12, but Dipper handled it before their mother found out, because she would have killed the kidnapper on the spot. Dipper used an immobilizing spell to capture them, barely hurting them, well, physically. He did use a nightmare spell on them, but their mother did have them executed. Dipper stargazing at night. When Dipper turned 18 in Darturk of 925 BS, he set out the day after his birthday, having gotten a ship and gathered a crew the month before. He also recruited Cleo de Nile as magical muscle, being top student at the academy. Dipper and Cleo had a platonic relationship at the time. It would be a few years before they became a romantic couple. Dipper and Leo saw their mother crying as they sailed off into the unknown. Dipper was a fine captain, having inherited his grandfather Pines' height and build, 6 feet, and was gaining a muscular build, and had become much more of an authority figure than his youth, and his cousin Avizandum gave him some pointers. The ship had no clear destination, just going wherever the ocean took them. They didn't travel along the charted paths and discovered many small islands between Luciolus and Farfilion. So small they wouldn't be on the world maps, but were on the nautical maps he was making. After spending almost half a year at sea, Dipper and his crew spent some time in Luciolus to rest. During his months at sea, Dipper not only created maps of the seas, but also of the stars. He focused on a single star named Polaria, and from there he began to map the stars, what stars were visible at what time and where specifically, and began his work on constellations, specifically the future Aurora signs. After a couple weeks, the starfish went upwards, north of Luciolus, and about 2 months discovered a few small islands, along with Ya, was inhabited by large semi-rabbit creatures. And they had large pouches, while the females did, and a few had the most adorable babies in them. He was compelled to draw them in the book. Mid-spring, the crew discovered a large land mass, larger than any island they'd come across. They set anchor and explored the land, discovering a large stretch of mountains like the mountains kingdom of southern Farfilion, and the Plagorora Mountains that ran down Luciolus. Dipper and Avizandum led parties east and west to see what was beyond them, and it was quite interesting. East was a large desert within a river down the middle, and the west was very lush wet lands with rivers. When they met up, they compared notes and decided to tell their families of a potential land for another colony. The journey back took a few months, but Dipper read the stars and allowed them to journey home just in time for Dipper's 19th birthday in 924 BS. The crew celebrated Leo's 16th birthday out at sea. Out at sea, Dipper had stopped shaving and Leo had just started growing hair, the two looking different when their mother saw them for the first time in a year. One of Dipper's surviving maps, Captain Dipper sailing home. While his mother, Queen Selene, handled the future colonization of his newly discovered land, and while Dipper wanted to journey to show them, Avizandum journeyed, insisted cause 1, he was thinking of moving his kingdom to the new land like the Firefly Kingdom did, and 2, Dipper's wings spread in an early spring of 923 BS. The emergency of his wings meant he could access magic without a wand, but he would also need to spend some time at home to train. While Dipper was admitted to the academy to learn how to use wandless magic, he also returned home a few times to hand some throne aspects, because his mother was off heading to colonization. Dipper was an exceptional student, but also devoted some of his time to developing his constellations, and got an idea. The wand draws magic from crystals and mill horses, and the sorcery he was learning is drawn from an inner source, and he wondered if magic was in other things as well that could be drawn out. Dipper began to work on ritual magic, the magic that is drawn from outside sources. While some plants and animals had magical properties, he wondered if other things had magical properties. Example was whenever the Hecate moons made certain phases, certain energies could be felt by mages, and he wondered if there was a way to draw on that power. Dipper really put a lot of thought and energy into developing his theoretical magic. The next year in 922 BS, on the spring equinox, Dipper used magic to jumpstart the land, reawakening it after its slumber through the winter, far earlier than what would have happened naturally. Dipper drew upon the magic of the change of seasons, the even hours of night and day to accelerate the re-fertilization of the land. But Dipper was warned by Glosric that while it worked, it was reckless, and the kind of magic he performed could have gone seriously wrong, as Dipper did it on the fly and should have done more practice. That was also the year that Avizandum began moving willing citizens to the new continent, Libellion. The end of that summer, Dipper left the academy, majoring in water magic, and began thinking about returning to voyaging. After his 21st birthday, Dipper hit the high seas again, along with his brother Leo, 18, and his twin younger brothers Phobos and Deimos, who were 16 and anxious to join their brothers on their voyage. The starfish sailed west for several months. By the start of fall in 921 BS, after journeying farther than ever before, they came across a large and long mountain range. The farther south they went, the colder and more ice sheets they came across, making it more dangerous to cross. After sailing back north, they found a small path between two mountains, and while Dipper wanted to go through, some feared that they'd hit the end of the world, but Dipper was determined to see what was past the mountains. Again, many were scared they'd reached the end of the world, due to the similarity of the mountains that were on the other side of the forest of certain death, and nobody made it past the glacier seas, which were like the waters they'd encountered before, leading many to believe this was the eastern edge of their world. But Leo was literally the first to jump off, saying he would be the first to see. The only other besides Dipper and Leo was Cleo Denial, who commented she was the only crew member with the set. But Dipper ordered the twins to stay behind in case they ran into trouble. The three went through the mountains, and what they found was a large forest. They went back to their ship, and others did volunteer to go with them and explore the forest. The forest itself bared an awful close resemblance to the forest of certain death back home, and many took notes of that. Dipper and the others camped out in the forest for a few nights, wondering what would happen if they continued, but they pressed on, with his brother most enthusiastic, quite fearless actually. Leo was often the one in the front of the party, telling the others to hurry up. After quite some traveling, the group finally made it out of the forest, and a little more bit of travel, and they came across a village, a Mewni village. Into the unknown. And that's where we're going to stop with part 1 of Dipper, the Father of the Stars biography. I hope you all enjoyed. Thank you for listening. Remember that this story belongs to MewniHistorian on DeviantArt. Please go check him out. And thank you, MewniHistorian, for allowing us to read your story. Thank you all for listening. I'll see you next time, hopefully soon, for part 2 of this biography. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye now. Have a great rest of your day.